Welcome, this is Ben Zinn for nextlevelguitar.com. We're going to take a look at some approaches to jamming and improvising over this medium blues track in A. A lot of fun. We're going to give you some cool examples, some cool licks that you can play over this jam track. So our jam track that we're talking about today is in the key of A minor. It's following a 12-bar blues format. So briefly, we want to take you through the chord changes that are happening. Our one chord in the key is an A minor chord. We spend 4 measures on that chord. Now we go to a D minor chord. That's what we would call our 4 chord in the key of A. And I'm going to spend 2 measures on that chord. Then I'm back to the A minor chord for 2 measures. Now we go up to an E minor for only 1 measure, to a D minor for 1 measure, to an A minor for 1 measure, and on the turnaround we hit this guy, the staple, the E7 sharp 9. So good to be aware of those chord changes as we're playing through our jam track. Now as we move into what I would call phase 2 of jamming over this blues jam track, what we want to start to do is to be aware of when the chord changes happen and start thinking of ways that we can play along with the chord changes or mark the chord changes with our jamming and our note selection. The first and best way to start doing this is to simply be aware of where the root notes are of each chord. So if I reference this position here, I'm aware that this note is an A note, this note is an A note, and that note is an A note. So when I'm jamming in this position, I want to craft my explorations and ideas around those root notes, thinking about them as though they have a strong pull. When I'm playing over the A minor chord, I may start out a lick, go somewhere else, and return to the A note. This is a very important concept because the lick sounds like it's at home when you land on the root note. Now, when the chord changes, the root note changes. As I start to be aware of this, here's a D note, here's a D note. When we switch over to the next chord, I may want to frame my licks a little bit differently and start to think about highlighting the root notes of the chord while I'm playing. So I may start a lick this way, but I may work it into that root note of where the chord is going to end up. So we're listening now as we're playing. We're keeping track of where we're at in the format of our jam track and playing our licks appropriately to the chord changes. We're going to have a couple of E notes as well. So we'll have an E note here and an E note here. Now this is important when we're over the E minor chord. We may want to frame our licks around that. So this is just starting to get into this idea of playing the changes and treating each chord as a separate event so that we can play effectively in this way. Let's take you through some playing examples now over the track and take a listen and a look for how we're going to move these licks to match the chord changes. Another fun device that we can use thinking about playing as the chords change is to actually change our pentatonic scale to move positions with the chord. So for example, we've been living in this world here. When we get to the D minor chord, why not try changing to a D minor pentatonic? This works effectively as well. And over the E minor pentatonic, I'm just shifting the same exact shape up the neck. Fun. So the idea here is when I go to a D minor chord, I'm going to come up and play in my D minor pentatonic. But then I'm going to resolve this scale back to my A minor pentatonic when the chord goes back. So my A minor pentatonic in this position. So I may play over the D chord. But then resolve back into an A position. And I can do this over the E chord too. Do a little bit of playing up here in the over the E minor chord, and then resolve back, knowing that being my E minor pentatonic, but when we get back to A, my scale changes. So the idea here is that we're changing scales with each chord, but we're always going back to home base. Home base is our A minor pentatonic. So let's take a look at a couple of examples over the jam track where we could use this method now. We're starting to see, as we're looking at the chord changes, that they're going to affect what we decide to play. We're going to play some different notes or maybe some different scales as we're playing over the jam track when the chords change. Okay, everyone. Well, I want to say thanks so much for checking out this lesson. And just remember, this is all a jumping off point. We're just trying to present some concepts for you so that you guys out there can make them your own and come up with your own examples. You know, come up with your own ways of playing over this. And most importantly, have fun, get lost in the track, enjoy these jam tracks. We have so many others in other styles and related to certain artists, so be sure to check those out too. Once again, I want to say thanks so much. My name is Ben Zinn for NextLevelGuitar.com, and I'll see you next time.